Hey, hello everybody. I'm Sarah Wolf. It's great to see you. Hi, um, hi Wally. Um, and everyone, you can't start naming everyone, or now that it's recording, I'm like, what will it be? But I'll just introduce myself, Sarah Wolf, Strategic Policy Director with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, and Buff Grace. Will you please introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everybody. I work with helping congregations work on climate change and resiliency hubs and solar and all that good stuff. Good to see everybody.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to talk about Here Comes the Sun, this book by Bill McKibben. And I think what I'd love to do is just make a couple comments, um, and then go into breakout rooms, if that's okay. Just a couple breakout rooms so that you can introduce yourself to the people in that room, and then we'll address the first question. Um, in that kind of style. I'm weighing with that whether that's a good idea because we have not an overwhelming number of people by any means. Buff, thoughts? Should we stay in one group or break out? It's hard to know.
We might have enough. We might have few enough people. We could just do it all in one room.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that sounds good. If you'll let me, I will share my screen here. Because I just want to, well, actually, no, if we're going to be in one room, I really almost just let's introduce each other. Let's say hello to each other now. Is that okay? I'm going to start with a few technical things about this. Um, but I think we may have it going now. Could we just do introductions where
I
you
think
say
you
your
may
name
want
and where
to
you live?
stop. If we're going to do introductions, you may want to stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you
There
for
we go.
that. And we could even stop the recording. Is that a good idea? Happening in the world. Um, and I knew that I wanted to talk about it with people, and get their perspectives on it and see if it was resonating for other people in the way that I was feeling like it was inspiring to me. But beyond that, I was thinking this is more than talking about a book. This is really the direction that the world is going. But what we need to do is be able to shout that narrative from the mountaintops, because of the forces that are working to prevent that message from getting out. So I'm just going to take maybe a couple minutes right now, uh, to sit to frame up where I think we are. And I think that as a result of Bill McKibben's book, as a result of a think tank named Ember Energy that has put together a slide deck that I'm going to be sharing some slides with and giving you a link to, and some thought leaders in this space. David Roberts has a Volts podcast, and he's interviewed Kingsmill Bond, and these people are talking about the way we are now fundamentally entering a new energy age. And it's a century of evolution that is moving us and coalescing into a decade of revolution in which we find ourselves in the beginning of that decade of revolution right now. And I'm going to share, if possible, here just a few slides. And Buff, really love your help making sure that I'm not showing everyone
Yeah, I think
improve
you,
parts.
yeah, it's looking good. You got it up.
Okay. So I mentioned Ember Energy as the think tank, and what they are proposing is that we are in a new age of electrotech. Moving this is a slide directly from their slide deck, but we have the industrial revolution, the age of steam, the age of steel and electricity, and then the age of oil and mass production, and the digital age, and now we're into the electrotech age of renewable energy and electrification. And there are three fundamental drivers, they say, of the change that's going on, and thus three fundamental drivers of the hope I'm seeing here. And one is physics. The efficiencies achieved through solar, wind, and battery are just much greater than fossil fuels. Bill McKibben talks about that too. But the other that's converging now too is the economics. And this is what Bill McKibben has talked about this. In the last 18 months, we're in a new place in terms of how much these technologies cost and how competitive they are. And the third driver of this mass of change that's going to happen to our energy system is geopolitics. I think I can just say headlines of the last 2 weeks, thinking about US actions in Venezuela and talking about Greenland and other things, help us understand that when we are reliable on an elsewhere for our energy systems, that puts us in a difficult position. And if there's a chance to own our own energy and produce that, it can drive real change. So, in a weird way, the chaos that I feel being created around the globe helps people look for something else when it comes to their energy systems. So, with that, I just want to start this discussion here by opening it up to us, and I'm gonna stop sharing in a second, but I'm gonna put this question to all of us, um, to all of you. What is something for those of you who've been, whether you've read 5 pages or more or heard something, and if you don't want to say anything for sure, no worries. But what is something that strikes you from the book and seems memorable, seems worthy of sharing with others? If there's a message that you would want to commit to memory so that you could share it with people, what might that be?
Well, I have a question. That I don't know if I would share this out, but if I had the answer, he
Yeah.
mentioned that solar is more expensive here than in other places. And I'm curious, I maybe answered this in the book, but um, if that's the case, and that's true of other things too, like prescription drugs and whatnot, and if cost is the barrier, how do we? I can tell all of my neighbors it's important, do it now. But if the price is still high, they're not going to do it. So that's, I guess, I don't know if that's a takeaway, but like he pointed that difference out.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I'm excited for Buff to weigh in on it. I I will say like uh Bill McKibben and others are looking at the whole world and what's going on around the whole world. And um different things have happened. So I see Buff coming off. I'm gonna pass it to you, Buff.
Yeah, and feel free to skip my question because I think you were looking for maybe just like I don't know, sequence as you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'd offer just quickly, and then yeah, I agree we should move on to lots of comments. It's just some of it has a lot to do with scale. So, for instance, if we were going to build a little coal-fired power plant in our backyard to fire our house, that would cost a lot more per kilowatt hour generated than if we build a giant coal-fired power plant centralized somewhere. And it's similar with solar. It's just a scalability issue. So it cost just like everything tends to cost a lot less the bigger economy of scale you are able to actualize. So
Yeah, I don't know if this is available online anymore because it was put out by the National Renewable Energy Lab before they changed its name and mission. Um, but I did download a copy as soon as this administration got elected, but it breaks down the costs of solar, both residential, commercial, and utility scale in the United States. And what's striking is the costs in the United States. There are really three that are much larger here, three categories much larger here than anywhere else in the world. The one is the customer acquisition costs, so like sales, because door knocking, billboards, sending people out neighborhoods cost money, right? They don't they don't need to do that in other places where there's essentially a consensus that getting solar is a good thing, right? Um, there's a finance cost that other places don't have because solar loans in many situations are scams, frankly, unfortunately. And then third is what we discussed earlier is the costs of compliance. Those soft costs of interconnection, permitting, engineering are much higher here than anywhere else because of a monopolistic, whoever controls the fossil fuels wins. And McKibben talks about that in his book, but I've also, there's that report from the National Renewable Energy Lab, and I've also encountered it in my own life, both working for the utility and for myself. So I don't know if that accounts for everything, and there is an element to the economy of scale too, but we just have a different. We're just built differently and not necessarily better here in America, as
Yeah. I mean,
as
if
much
someone in
as we'd like to
Pakistan can
believe.
get solar as an individual, it seems like your third piece, the compliance piece, might be a really big part of it.
yeah,
But yeah, we
Yeah,
can move on to
yeah, no, but
yeah.
he does talk about it in his book, and it's very relevant to this conversation, I believe. So
Yeah.
sorry for
yeah.
jumping in there, but
No.
I think
So,
it is very relevant, and we need to not be gaslit by people who say solar is too expensive because they're the ones who are making it too expensive.
Yeah.
Great,
Sarah,
thank you. Yeah.
the salient point I got. I think as someone who's been interested in this, and feeling hopeless that we're going over the cliff on climate change. There's what can we do? I mean, we're not moving around, or we're not doing what we should be doing. The one thing that he reminded me, we're I'm in the United States. I'm in Minnesota. You know, if you look at the world, they're doing it. We're not. I think a statistic, and I follow there. Enough solar is going in every day to replace a coal-fired power plant. Every
Yes.
day. There are enough solar panels going in around the world to replace coal-fired plant. That is, you know, I
Hmm.
mean, so I mean, I have traveled overseas before when I was at the university, and I saw there's things going on different. But China is just not only eating our lunch, they're eating our breakfast and our dinner as well. We are, and what was really exciting, Africa. They get some panels, they put them out, and they got power now. You know, it's and right. I mean, there's certainly safety issues and all the things that we were just talking about in Peter, but I mean, I think that really gave me a whole perspective. I got to remember that, you know, just not what's going around us here and why it's making us feel so hopeless. There are other things in the world that are much more hopeful. And I think, you know, we should be, I thought we were waking up a couple times. And this last go around is really a gut punch, just in the last, the last 6 months here, or a year. But um, I even think we might overcome this and get our act together. And, you know, I think he said we got about 4 years before really things we need to get going and catch up on this. And economics are, there's we've got the tailwind. I mean, it's by far the cheapest way to produce energy, and but that one statistic that the rest of the world has been doing this, in the last, 5 to 10 years, or especially in the last few years, it has really made me wow, I think we can avoid some real issues. So,
We're advancing that trajectory. I
right.
agree. Oh, that's really a great one. Thanks, Larry. Dawn, and then I see Wally.
Thank you. Here's what I would say to that person is we can't afford not to go in that direction. And and here's why. And this is something I've been getting from my solar installer to be, hopefully. Anyway, is that the utilities, like we're just at the beginning of them really raising prices. And it would be really great if an organization like yours, Sarah, could, and maybe you already have this, have that information about um, how Excel Energy, for example, here, our big utility, is planning on raising rates and charging, different time rates so that you're going to pay more at the high times of use. And all these different policies are coming down. And so people's pocketbooks are really going to be hit hard. And so if you can afford it at all, this is what Bill got me back to thinking. I'd given up on the solar, like, okay, just forget it. I'm not going to live here and maybe not long enough for a 20-year return on investment on my project. But then he's like, we can't afford not to, it's just too inefficient. And as time goes on, our electricity is going to go. It's already gone up, right? It's going to keep going up. But if we can throw that number at our neighbors or friends who ask, I think that's really useful. And here's the other thing that I would say, and goes with the first question, is the whole fact that people can purchase solar panels and put them on their balcony and help reduce their electrical bill immediately. And yes, it's happening in Germany, which is cloudy and similar climate wise, but Utah, of all states, has allowed that now. And I think that's an eye opener and real world example that you can use with people as, that's something that can happen right here, right now. And it's all about policy, which of course most of it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent points about balcony solar and also just the fuel becoming free. Wally.
Yes, well, one of the things that stuck with me after reading this book, or while I was reading it, is, and I'm not sure he used the word democratizing energy in the book, but that's another term that I've read recently. That for so many hundreds of years, we've depended on companies to buy products like coal or gas or oil, and they've been able to control that for their profits. And now, if you have solar panels, you could put them out and all of a sudden you're getting electricity and you don't have to rely on a third party to purchase electricity from them. That's kind of a change in dynamics. And I'm glad the plug-in solar or balcony solar was mentioned because I think that changes a lot of people's perspective about solar. Um, and I guess I'm interested what uh, MNIPL is going to pursue as far as policy changes at the state, because as Dawn mentioned, Utah is doing plug-in solar. So why can't Minnesota do plug-in solar? That just changes everybody's perspective.
Yes, awesome. I'll tell you that we are working with Representative Kraft on that bill right now. He's bringing it this session. I don't think I'm supposed to say that. I can't remember. I think he's given me permission. Yes. And Brett Pence, who is our Northern Operations Director, is really working closely on that too because he has a lot more technical knowledge than he and Buff both have this technical knowledge. So yes, Wally, and we're going to be bringing a webinar hopefully to talk about that specific thing so that we can encourage can get the grassroots support we need for that bill to make some progress in the legislative session. That's yeah. So I shouldn't have interjected with all that, but
I
I
just
think
want
it's an
to add
exciting
one
thing.
other piece. Like if you have a plug-in thing, you can take it to your next home, right? You can like it becomes an asset and you can take it to a green fair and you can demo it. It's like it becomes, well, I don't know how big they are, how many panels, but like it becomes this thing like you would buy at Costco instead of this thing that you have to like beg Excel for, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Nancy.
Yeah, I was just going to say my takeaways from the book was the amount of advancement in solar and wind, regardless of political allegiance or alliance, however you want to phrase that. There's a lot of great things happening in states, leaning both Democrat and Republican. And then I look at, what's going on with Venezuela right now. And really, what does that oil cost if you look at military actions in order to obtain that, secure that? That's expensive oil.
Expensive oil and just um, I think it's been interesting. I haven't followed it closely, but it seems like Trump gathered a bunch of oil executives and said, "Hey, how about we invest in Venezuela?" And then the oil executives were like, "Well, let's think about that." Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's because they know this presentation. They know what Bill's saying. Um,
Hmm.
is part of their reality too.
Well, and it's not secure. A lot of them have already lost a lot of money. It's unstable. And so unless the US can guarantee that they can stabilize the country and the economy, it doesn't make sense for them to go in and harvest, if you want to say that.
Can I
Drill, baby, drill.
can I point out one little point to that to what you're saying, Nancy? In chapter 9, over on page 181, and remember he wrote this more than a year ago. So this is so prescient, I thought. He's quoting an author, Samuel Miller McDonald, in a 2024 book. And he says, McDonald points out, because fossil fuels themselves are easy to concentrate, they often yield authoritarian outcomes.
Yep.
A petrostate is 50% more likely to be authoritarian and only a quarter as likely to transition to democratic government than a state without petroleum as a major economic base. And I thought, God, and it's like he just these folks saw, they predicted Venezuela, that what we're doing right now.
Yeah. I I think he was suggesting what would it look like if we hadn't had wars over fossil fuels? You know, if that political dynamic didn't exist, how would history have changed? Um, and how would it be changing now? What do we see? Um,
Can I
so,
jump? I was just going to jump in real quick and just say, but it also makes sense how his argument about, you know, petroleum products are confined to certain areas, and so certain people dominate those, and then they can regulate and dominate. But sun is everywhere, not at the same time, but and then with the battery technology improving so much so that Scylla becomes the main base of that potentially is astounding, and that will democratize energy. Don't tell Excel energy though.
right. One of the things I've been trying to wrap my head around is the idea that when you're replacing a fossil fuel capacity with renewable capacity that has batteries, you don't need as much capacity as you did before. And maybe someone has a better a beat on this. I don't necessarily have the best explanation, but you have the ability to give and take with your batteries, and your peaks can level out, and so you suddenly don't need the largest coal plant, the peaker plants to go with it. Those batteries have enabled you so much more flexibility. I
Yeah,
I
because you don't have to build for that peak demand.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought one of the things that struck me was the analogy to granaries. And maybe this is from one of the supplemental materials, but the idea that what changed for agriculture when suddenly you didn't you can store. You don't have to meet everyone's hunger at that moment. Um, but you can draw upon your storage. Pretty amazing.
Well, and I think Bill covered that in the book too, of sun by day, wind by night. So storage is obviously a factor, but you don't have to rely on renewables just during the daylight hours.
Right. So this is that convergence that's happening. It's the solar getting cheaper and the batteries becoming more available and with different technologies. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I find myself just not arguing anymore. uh, because the argument that, well, we can't go 100% solar because the sun doesn't shine 100% of the time. We're not 100% anything, right? We're not 100% gas. We're not 100% coal. We're not 100% nuclear. It's a mix, right? So I tell them, before we worry about 100%, why don't we get to 10% and then 20%, right? Why don't we start worrying about it once we get over 50% solar? Let's not have that argument now. Let's just when it's a real problem, let's talk about
I'll do the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think one other thing that that he said in the book that, not only are we talking about the supply, but by going electrifying, we are reducing our demand, you know, big time. You know, a gasoline car is at most 40% efficient. An EV is essentially like 80, 90, twice as efficient, so we don't have, yeah, I agree. I think we can balance that load because if we're doing electrifying, we're going to pull down our energy need, our demand by huge amounts. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And so That's another thing that I think he very very well, I think, pointed out and talked about.
It's stunning the inefficiencies that we've grown used to with our life based on fossil fuels, which we're not really taught to recognize as we go forward. Yes, Don.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but the other thing I like that he brought in, and he did mention March 2025, so it's a pretty current book, but no pun intended with current, geez. Anyway, is the AI, the data centers, which is becoming bigger and bigger issue, not only, I mean, yes, they use a ton of water, but also the energy demand of those. And so I don't know if this would be appropriate for other questions, but um, there's just going to be a bigger demand on energy for that too.
Yeah. And it seems like the perfect time. Like, since you have this massive increase in demand, why don't you allow for like this massive increase in supply from all of us who are begging for solar, like right now, so that they align, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to take us to the second question, which is feeling related to some of the things that we're talking on now. And Peter, I saw your hand, but maybe,
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that if these massive data center companies who are also trying to buy up our utilities, by the way, um, Minnesota Power, BlackRock acquired. They also own 80 data centers that are operating or in development. They're also trying to pick up AEP, which I believe is in, I don't know, south of here, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, something like that. But I mean, if they wanted to, for a fraction of the cost of the energy, because homeowners are never going to be able to outbid Google or Meta for their energy, right? If so I have to get in front of Jeff Bezos or the right people, but say, look, if you really want to remove public opposition to data centers coming into their neighborhoods, just pay for solar for people's homes, solar and batteries for people's homes in the neighborhood. And sure, there's going to be some people opposed on principle, but if people know that they and their families are secure in their energy, they're going to step out of the way. So I don't know if they're going to do that or just rather bribe legislators, but sorry, I'm now in my 50s, so I no longer have a filter when it comes to this stuff. So that's my take on it. I'll let you move on.
all right, well, I'll send in the wrap-up resources, the webinar we did on that very topic, Peter, about homegrown energy. Well, one of the things that I'm going to take us to the second question now, which is really what trepidations have you had about the uh, about electrotech, about solar, and Bill McKibben spends some chapters addressing various uh, issues that he thinks people might be worried about. And I'm wondering if those issues have felt real to you. Um, Issues about natural resources or other pieces, if they've been felt like concerns to you, and what you think about McKibben's responses. Now, I'll open that up to you, and then I have a couple of slides too. Joy.
Yeah, my first concern or trepidation is like circular economy. Like, okay, we're going to produce all of these panels. This is our opportunity to maybe do it in a way where they don't just get tossed into our electronic waste. However, I will take massive electronic waste in order to deal with the short-term issue and then deal with the electronic waste later. So I don't want to like slow anything down, but like that does come to mind.
Yeah, yeah. Wally.
Well, I'm not, I read that book and I was encouraged because if we recycled all the electronics that we now have stuck in our drawers, that would go a long way to supplying the metals that we need. And I know that the Rise and Repair Alliance focused on electronic recycling last year, and I think that's coming back to the legislature this year. So I certainly would like to get behind that. And, I think even Bill McKibben said, maybe by 2040 or 2050, we won't have to mine anymore for in the ground for metals. We'll just be recycling what we've already mined. That was encouraging.
Totally. I'd love to share a couple slides that just reinforce that point. Can you see this one? This is a good slide too. It wasn't the one I was mainly going to, but just talking about the amount of sunshine that we get every 5 days is equivalent to all of the energy reserves we have on Earth for the rest of time. Just the comparison of that. And I am looking for the one slide about trepidations here. This slide from Ember is about the unbearable heaviness of the fossil fuel system. And again, it's looking at the material demand for the energy transition and the solar panels and the EVs and all of that. And on the left in the green is the material demand for that transition for 25 years. And on the right is the fossil fuel extraction per year that we have. And
Those graphics are really important because when people see zeros, they tend to lose. So, so I think they estimate that solar waste by 2030 is going to be about 100,000 tons or something like that a year. For comparison, right now, the waste from burning coal is 100 million tons, which is, 1,000 times more per year. So and frankly, we're the only industry that and wind that frankly has thought about the end of the system life from the beginning. Wouldn't it have been great if petroleum and coal had thought about that once upon a time when they were getting started? So yeah, it's a valid concern, but we're already addressing it, and it's much smaller of an issue than business as usual.
Can you help me make sure I'm clear on the unit of measure for these? So I'm seeing that 25 years worth of million metric tons on the left relative to 1 year in our current state. Is it material? Is it CO2 equivalent? What is the...
I think it's just on the right, it's million metric tons of coal. So it's 9 billion, I think, tons of coal.
I see the units really correspond to how they're labeled. Okay, so sometimes it's a material, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of units.
This is true. Right. Right. So it's at 5,000 million metric tons of oil. And for gas.
We don't have to belabor it. I was just curious if it was obvious.
Yeah. It's a little
I think
complicated.
the big thing is that 50 times more stuff has to be we're doing now with fossil fuel and solar. It's a whole lot less stuff.
Yeah, I saw a graphic, and I wish I had saved it and credited it, but it was a graphic that had a whole bunch of ships on a slide saying for, megawatt hour of energy produced. I can't remember what the numerator and the denominator was, but basically it takes 100 to 150 times more material for energy to be produced from burning it and fossil fuels than it does for renewable sources, especially solar. So it showed like all these ships, and one of them was a ship with solar panels, and the rest of them were ships with coal and natural gas on them.
Yeah, so it's really just material, like whatever you fill the container with, whether it's steel or coal or oil, it's just like the material itself.
What you're taking out of the earth. Yeah, Dwight.
Oh, I wanted to say that this is the most helpful element in his book, this the minerals. We have done a lot of electrifying, both at our home here in Minneapolis and at our farm out in Douglas County. And I'm on 3 Google groups with my classmates, so they're old farts like me in their early 80s. And the response, I'm prophetic, I act prophetically, so I talk about what we're doing. And the answer that I got in every one of those groups is, "Oh yeah, but look at all, the lithium, what are we going to do for that? And your car, we have an EV, but your car, takes all those, all that energy to construct." And I've come up with an answer, but it's a shoddy shadow of what Bill has done here. So I'm gonna use this. This will be really helpful in my articulating a concise and persuasive answer to them.
Oh,
So thanks, Bill, and thanks you.
yeah, it's great to hear. I we live in many of us in Minnesota and around the country, but in Minnesota we have mines, and many people are trying to protect water and land and uh, Lake Superior and the Boundary Waters from copper nickel sulfide mining. And so it's a sensitive issue, and people are aware and wanting to be sensitive, but I think the perspective is really helpful. The slide that I have up now, again, is this one is talking about, I think some of you were just mentioning this. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering why. Was it maybe you, Larry? But this idea that as we go, because the tech is becoming more efficient, it is likely that in 10 or 20 years, the metals that we have within our car or within the solar panels that have come to an end of life and need to be, uh, recycled will go further because efficiency gains will have been so much. And so if we are doing the appropriate job and not just throwing things away to never see them again, but we're recycling them, we can have a virtuous cycle and not need to mine continually into the future.
And don't forget the silica batteries coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Amazing technology and battery development, which is so, because we hear things about battery fires now. Frankly, I don't love hearing about, thinking about explosive things. That's also why I don't want to have natural gas in my house.
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. Here's a slide that's about learning beats digging. Electrotech gets cheaper with scale, whereas fossil fuels get more expensive. And I loved the points made about this within these materials, that fossil fuels, we see prices go up and down for our gas, but largely they're not going down in price. Because as you get the easy stuff, you have to dig deeper, and digging deeper is more expensive. And that is just part of the fossil fuel commodity system. think Ember and others make a distinction between the tech that we're talking about, the electro tech, solar, wind, battery, being a technology. And technologies, if you can make them in a factory, go down in price. The more you use, the cheaper it gets. Commodities don't behave in that manner, well, for the most part. All right, I'm going to stop this share. We are at 7:46, and so I'm sorry, I meant to be done at 7:45. I think what I'd love to do is bring this to a close in the next minute, but saying that I've got a lot of resources that I will send out tomorrow with information on where I got, where got the slide and that kind of thing, but also the kinds of things that MNIPL is working on. And I'm sorry that I've gone over here because I have a couple of links I want to put into the chat if you can hang with me here. But if you need to go, I certainly just want to express appreciation for your time on this call, but your time thinking about these ideas. I think they're important. They're happening anyway, but all over the place, we are going to be shouted down by narratives coming from fossil fuel interests. And we need to be armed with information to help us tell the story. So
I
I'm
want to
excited.
thank everyone for being positive because it's been certainly a week that has pulled me in and out of darkness here in Minneapolis for sure. So it's good to be part of a positive group.
Right.
Amen.
You're here.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
Well, I think instead of keeping you while I grab the links that I was thinking of, I will just say good night and stay in touch, and expect an email from me tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.